claim insurance. So the claim rates is actually, I mean, they can there's a lot of profit margin for the insurance companies here. So it's still highly attractive for them.
This is very curious. So you're saying that people are eligible to claim, but they don't claim?
That's the report that we got. It's a culture that people don't really, because I suppose our perhaps hospitals, government hospitals are quite accessible. It's very cheap, subsidized by the government. So the rate of people taking insurance, the penetration rate is still quite low. So there's a lot of margin, and there's a lot of potentials for insurance companies without introducing a lot of innovative products. Unlike banks, perhaps that's the financial inclusion rate when it comes to banks compared to insurance is slightly different.
This is very curious to me, just as in general. Where would I find a report on the insurance companies?
I don't know where the insurance companies. I suppose we can check.
I might get back to you.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's available.
Excuse me for a second over here. I have to keep going back to my notes. The overarching framework within which I see the discussion is a framework that, as a sort of development cum monetary economist, I would say belongs to that prior to the Great Recession that hit the United States, in that it considers the financial sector as being a catalyst, if you like, for the real sector. But the financial sector and the real sector are separately thought of or separately modeled. One of the changes that people are talking about now is that finance has become so intertwined with the real economy that you should not consider one separately from the other. How far was this a question during the negotiations?
Could you expand on that in terms of, because I'm trying to see how we can respond to your question accurately.
Okay, the part of the problem with the Great Recession, maybe a major problem, is that the financial sector had spread itself so quickly and so widely, and if you like, in such a non-transparent way, through the use of securitization and shadow banks. That would be my next question. So why don't I start with the specifics? To what extent is securitization an issue in Malaysia?
Well, one of the key provision that we have in the financial services chapter that actually cuts across the entire TPP agreement is the ability for the regulators to take any necessary action to actually ensure financial stability and macroeconomic stability. And there's no limitation to what kind of actions that you can take. And this is where, let me see, if you look at it's Article 11 in the financial services chapter, Article 11.11, there are 4 paragraphs that allows the regulators or a government to take any necessary measures for several reasons. Paragraph 1 and 2 is the key ones.
Professor, would you like me to point it out for you?
Actually, this is the financial services chapter.
Yes.
So everything here is 13.
Oh, yes.
And you're mentioning 11.11.
13.
Oh.
Are you
Maybe
there's
there's
a NAFTA?
No, this is the TPPA, the published TPPA agreement.
I think this is 11.11. This could be an old one. I think.
Okay, might be an old one.
Yeah, right.
I have a newer one in my briefcase. You can just
That's okay.
get mine.
I can still show.
That's all right. I mean, if you
Yeah.
just read it out to me, I will find it.
Here, there it is. So it's Article 11. This is one of the key articles that we have. The countries have actually negotiated to ensure that regardless of whatever obligations that we have promised, this will actually supersede all the other obligations.
Okay. So
it's highly powerful, and this is what gives, I think, regulators or governments, host government, a bit more comfort in terms of would I be able to take certain measures, prudential measures. What is prudential to you? Is prudential to you prudential to me? This is again something that left broadly so that countries can actually define or interpret themselves what is prudential, because it may be different from one country to the other, and this is where we think it's a really strong obligation. We're not there in a lot of previous FTAs. Even our investment guarantee agreement before, Malaysia's investment guarantee agreement, we never had this kind of strong provision to guarantee or to ensure that a country continue to have the policy space or that ability. So I suppose this is where we actually fall back into, what can we do? Can we take any necessary measures? And the answer is yes, you can.
I'm told though that as the law now stands, even without TPPA, securitization is possible and securitization is permitted. Now, am I wrong in that?
I think
Sorry, may I ask you, what do you mean by securitization?
In the specific US context that I'm more familiar with,
Right.
it consists of the bundling together of, say, mortgage loans
Right.
from a variety of different, let's say, different regions.
Right.
So you take mortgage loans from all the different
Okay.
provinces in Malaysia,
Okay.
and then you form a composite bundle
Yes.
that has a different risk category because it is diversified.
Right.
This is then resold
Right.
Yeah.
on the market
Right.
as a new asset.
Yes. Okay.
And it was the sale of this sort of
Yeah,
asset
that caused
the-
of bundling
Okay.
that was a primary cause of the crisis.
Right.
So my question now is that process, even without TPPA, currently permitted? And if it is permitted, what is the extent of it within Malaysia?
Okay. I mean, to be honest, I don't have the answer. I don't think.
Perhaps I could email you later.
Yeah, because I need to refer back to my regulators. They are the one
Sure.
who's regulating this. But again, in the event that because without TPP, we already have that power. I mean, the central bank mandate is actually to ensure there's it will not lead to any instability. So even without TPP, if in the event that such securitization, as you mentioned, is permitted, and if we have already seen SIPCAM, the bank will be able to do something. And with TPP, once the TPP is implemented, let's say the bank take action that would somehow cause injury to foreign banks, they will not be able to take Malaysia to task because we have taken that measure for the purpose of stability. But I think we have to get back to you because
Yes.
I don't have the answer.
Of course,
Yeah.
that is fine. The follow-on question from that, before I get to the overall question that I asked, is one of the problems in the United States was that you had many financial institutions that had the power to accept deposits, issue asset documents, and function like banks, but without being regulated by banks. These were the shadow banks. To what extent is the commercial paper market, or what they call the repo market in the US, perhaps you have the same term here, to what extent is that prevalent in Malaysia, and how regulated is it?
I think if you look at the scope of the TPP, the Financial Services Chapter, it does say that the obligations would be subject to financial institutions that is regulated as to entities that is regulated by as a financial institutions in the jurisdiction. So oh, sorry, not scope, definition. Yeah, it says financial institutions, so whatever that we have, whatever obligations that is imposed on financial institutions that falls within the definition of financial services, is that any financial intermediaries or enterprise authorized to do business and regulated or supervised as financial institutions. So if you're not supervised as financial institutions, like you mentioned just now, then they are not part of this obligation, which means you can do anything that you need to do to regulate or to control. That's how we see this financial services chapter functions in the context of TPP. With regards to your questions, sorry, could you go back? Your questions, yeah.
I mean, how prevalent is the system of shadow banking in Malaysia now, and what is its extent?
I think that is something that we need to get back with our regulators, because there is a separate department that deals with these areas. So this will be a good follow-up email.
Great. I will send you an email on that.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what my general understanding of, so to speak, the spirit of the TPPA was with regard to these chapters in particular. What it seemed to be saying is that Malaysia can impose any restrictions it wants on the financial sectors, provided it does not discriminate between local and foreign banks, and foreign meaning TPPA member banks. Have I understood the spirit correctly?
The TPP, or the Financial Services Chapter, does not limit a host government to regulate. So you can come up with new regulations, you can continue to develop your financial services chapter, your financial services sector, as long as it is non-discriminatory.
Exactly. Perfect.
That's the whole idea.
Perfect. So
yeah.
I understand the general thrust of it then.
Yeah.
So once I get the questions on the quantitative question out here, it seems that you've covered everything that is explicit in the risks to banking. The only questions I would then have are about things that people did not consider to be financial services, but snuck into the problem under the radar, so to speak. And once I know get the data from you, I might come back and talk to you on that. How does Basel III impact on any of these?
I wouldn't say impact. I mean, I don't think there's any contradictions in terms of what is required.
I'm sure none, but just this is, I don't know enough to say much. But I'm just asking a general layman's question, because I have a former student who works for the Treasury now, and I said to him, what do you see as the impact of TPPA? And he wrote back to me and said that, the sort of regulations we are dealing with right now only apply to more complex banks than those you will be dealing with. So I wrote back to him and I said, what do you mean by a more complex bank? He hasn't replied yet. So maybe I will share that with you when he replies.
Okay.
But his idea was that whatever is happening in Basel III now, the changes they are proposing, do not directly impact on agreements like TPPA. And I was just wondering if that was your impression also.
I don't think there's any intention to actually trying to use TPP to get away from some of the international obligations, because the free trade agreement is supposed to be complementary, and it is a one rule that guides everybody at a higher level, international standards. I don't think, our own personal views is that there's no discriminatory, or it doesn't supersede or trying to get around certain requirements.
It is just obviously the US would want to conform to Basel.
Yeah.
So
because I think there are two ways to look at this. You have your free trade agreements, which generally talks about the treatment of the government, of locals and foreigners, and then you have regulations like the Basel III, which basically everybody has already agreed to. Everybody, all the regulators in the world has agreed to. Let's try and follow this for the safety of an individual financial institution, an individual bank. So I think the Basel III is it's already in line. It's a prudential requirement to ensure that your entity is safe. Your financial entity is safe. So I think it's not I think what you said was right. That it's not directly related, and it's really because Basel III has already been thought of. At least the prudential requirements that's imposed by other international agreements has already been thought of, and it has sort of been captured under the prudential, the exceptions, the Article 11. because it is essentially a prudential measure